Welcome back, Dinobytes viewers, to a very special episode, one that's dedicated to arguably the weirdest digital camera of the 1990s, and certainly the most fun. Yep, it's time to take another look at the Nintendo GameBoy Camera 24 years after it was first launched. Back in 1998, Nikon had the Coolpix 900 and Canon the PowerShot Pro 70. Both were state-of-the-art consumer digital cameras with optical zoom lenses and just over 1 megapixel resolutions, but also with price tags approaching or even exceeding £1,000, and at that point they were just way out of the reach of most photographers. Enter Nintendo with the Game Boy Camera, launched in Japan in early 1998 and later that year across Europe and North America. It slotted into almost any Game Boy using a built-in cartridge for storage and the game screen for composition. The low-res, almost monochrome images looked pretty awful, but costing just $50 it put digital photography into the hands of a huge audience, and in true Nintendo style, made the process easy and fun. Perhaps the biggest twist though is how a desire for vintage imaging coupled with a variety of cunning third-party accessories have seen the Game Boy Camera enjoy a new lease of life today. I picked up a second-hand Game Boy Camera for less than a tenner in a local retro store, and I took it out for a spin around Brighton in 2022. I bought the blue version to roughly match my Game Boy Color handheld, but it was also available in red, green or yellow, or in an additional transparent purple version in Japan only. Meanwhile, a limited edition Zelda branded gold model also sold in the US, so keep an eye open for those in thrift stores. The camera module was housed within a ball mounted atop a standard cartridge that could slot into any Game Boy handheld, from the original model to the Advanced SP, in fact pretty much everything apart from the Micro. The ball section was angled so that the Game Boy itself could be held in a position that made the screen easier to view, and it could also rotate by 180 degrees to face you for early self-portraits. The camera itself was designed around the capabilities of the original Game Boy screen. The CMOS sensor had 128 by 128 pixels, but the actual images themselves were cropped a little vertically to become just 112 pixels tall, so that equates to 0.014 megapixels, making it one of the lowest resolution digital cameras on the market. And the images weren't in colour either. Instead, the 2-bit system could accommodate just 4 shades, again to match the palette of the original Game Boy handheld. Each image was then recorded with a thick border to match the native 160 by 144 pixel resolution of the Game Boy system, with the Nintendo and Game Boy logos permanently embedded above and below every single image. Now that's what I call branding. Meanwhile, the cartridge had sufficient memory to store 30 images, and since they were independent from the handheld, you could slot the cartridge into someone else's Game Boy to view or manipulate them. In terms of the lens itself, Nintendo didn't quote any official specifications, but when comparing the coverage of the Game Boy camera to a standard zoom lens on a normal camera, I found that it was roughly equivalent to about 50mm, so standard coverage. Suffice it to say, there's no zoom, optical or digital, nor any official means to mount any additional accessories to modify that image optically, but that hasn't stopped a wealth of enthusiasts from mating it with microscopes, telescopes and pretty much everything in between. Now, if you'd not used the Game Boy camera before, you might assume you'd simply switch it on and start shooting, but the hardware was only one half of the story. The other side was the software interface, packed with mini-games, quirky extras and Easter eggs, some verging on the slightly disturbing. It's clear the software team had a lot of fun creating a system that not only provided a distraction from the hardware limitations, but also developing an experience that's still unique 24 years later. Okay, I can't delay it any longer. Let's check out the Game Boy camera in action. I have the cartridge here plugged into my Game Boy Color. You can see the colours of the units don't quite match, but they're pretty close. And the first thing you're greeted with is Dancing Mario, and an Easter egg already, because if I push the controller up, we can speed him up. If I push it down, we slow him down. So this is the main shooting interface, and you'll notice that the interface itself is in colour because I do have it connected to a colour device, and it will make use of that colour screen, but unfortunately the pictures are still just in 4 shades of grey. But you'll see there's 3 options here: shoot, which is obviously for taking pictures, view, which is for playing them, and play is for playing games, because after all this is a Nintendo device. So let's start with that shooting interface, and you're not going to get a live camera quite yet. Instead, you're greeted by this little nervous looking fellow and some slightly melancholic music. Now, shoot here will bring you to the camera itself, but I'm just going to show you a couple of other options first. Under items, we've got a self-timer and time-lapse facility. In Magic, there are a variety of lens, well, not quite filters, but special effects. You can generally do lots of kind of mirroring options, and also the ability to create panoramas. But there's this slightly odd option at the end, run, and this is another Easter egg. Let's see what happens. Well, that seems innocent enough. You're now crossing the equator. Jambo! However, if you go back into it, who are you running from? And this picture, this portrait does change. And this was one of the more kind of disturbing aspects of the Game Boy Camera interface, but let's move on. But let's go to the shoot option. And this is the basic interface. Now the camera is pointing forward, and unfortunately, in order to see the screen properly, I've got it angled towards a window, which means it's not really suitable for taking pictures. So I'm going to switch to some different footage now where you can see the actual composition a little bit clearer. Now, it's never going to be amazing on this kind of Game Boy, but basically the user interface lets you change two things. You can push the joypad up and down to adjust the brightness of the image, and there's a little bit of lag, so you may turn it right down and you have to wait a couple of seconds for it to actually really catch up. And left and right, adjust the contrast, and again there is a bit of lag as you do that. Then when you're ready to take a picture, you press A, you say, yeah, I do want that picture, and then it's saved. Now if we press B to go back to this interface, we can go to view to take a look at some of those pictures that we've taken. And again, what kind of meeting was there where this interface was agreed, where they said, you know what we really need in the playback menu is a face that comes out repeatedly of someone's mouth. But let's move on to the album, and these are the pictures that I've taken. And as you know, you can store 30 pictures on the Game Boy Camera, so there's slots for up to 30 of them, and there's a few more for some patterns and borders that you can add. You'll also see some blank positions there at the bottom. That means I've got a couple more pictures I can use to fill that particular album. You'll also notice that I've got a few funny poses of me here, pulling faces, and that is for use in some of the games. But first, let's have a look at this interface on my Game Boy Pocket, which has a grayscale screen. So you can see the playback menu here. And again, the actual number of shades that you've got in the pictures is the same, whether you're using a grayscale or a color screen, so there's no benefit in terms of the actual images themselves. But let's just take a look at one of them. As you can see, I'm pulling a funny pose there because I'm going to use this in one of the games. So I'm going to go back and now check out the play section. And I'm already faced by a bit of a space game here. Now there's 3 bosses here which can take me to some other games, but I'm just going to let them go and have a little... Yeah, let's get these guys and see what's going on. Now it will eventually take me back to that other interface where I can, as you can see there, go for the DJ or ball option or get killed. Let's play again, and I'm going to shoot one of these boss creatures. There we go. Ball, okay. Now, long-term Nintendo fans will immediately recognize this as a Game & Watch emulation where I have to juggle these balls. But look at the twist. That's my face. Yeah, so the game actually allows you to capture what they call game faces, and there's 4 of them in all, and then it animates them as the actual character's face. So Game & Watch has a new dimension to it. It's actually, oh, I was going to say it's actually quite easy, this. Evidently not. Look at this guy. Do I want to play again? No, I've had enough. I want to see some of the other games. Let's try that one. So this is the DJ app, and I can do things like increase or decrease the tempo. And again, this is using one of the game faces. This is using one of the pre-saved ones. You can add your own, as you saw before. Here's the third game. Run, run, run. And again, I can choose different faces. Let's go for a random face. I wonder if it'll choose me. Yep, there I am. And I'm gonna start to run. Here I go, here I go. Jump! Come on, Gordon, you can do better. What does Flap do? I'm not sure what Flap is doing. This reminds me of the heady days of Daley Thompson's decathlon on the ZX Spectrum. Happy 40th birthday, ZX Spectrum, this year. Oh, maybe I'm going to try and beat the bird. In fact, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Take that, bird. Yes! In your face. There I am, in second place. I beat the bird, but Monty Mola still beat me there. So there's certainly a lot of fun to be had within the GameBoy Camera interface, and I didn't even show you the chance to draw over your own photos with a little paintbrush or adorn them with various stickers like cartoon eyes. Now this is all very well, but beyond mutilating your images or starring in the various built-in games, what else could you actually do with the photos from the GameBoy Camera? Well, beyond inserting the cartridge into someone else's Game Boy in order to view or further manipulate your photos, there was no official way to actually extract the digital files from the Game Boy Camera itself for sharing or archive, say using a proper computer. Now, full-size Nintendo games consoles provided some workarounds with Game Boy adapters allowing you to view your photos on a TV, which in turn allowed you to potentially capture that video output and do something with it. In particular, the N64 console allowed you to transfer images and even save them onto the optional 64DD floppy drive unit, but again, that's not much use if all you want to do is store them on a normal computer and share them. And this was particularly frustrating as once your 30 slots in the cartridge were filled, the only way to make room for more of them was to permanently delete them. To work around this limited capacity, some enthusiasts even bought multiple Game Boy cameras in order to capture and store over 30 photos, which itself is not dissimilar to carrying around multiple rolls of film. But never one to miss out on an accessory sale, Nintendo's answer was the optional Game Boy Printer, launched alongside the Game Boy Camera and costing around $60 in 1998. The printer was completely portable, powered by 6 AA batteries. It connected directly to the link port on the Game Boy handhelds and made tiny stamp-sized prints on thermal paper. If anything, these prints actually look worse than the photos did on screen, but like the system as a whole, there's a certain slightly perverse appeal to them nonetheless. And besides, who else in 1998 was selling a digital camera and printer combination for just over $100? The Game Boy Printer has also held its value better than the camera cartridge, with my own unit costing around £35 second-hand from eBay, plus a few more quid on Amazon for the link cable that previously was bundled with it. If you need to buy a new cable for a printer, do be warned that there are different types for different Game Boys, so make sure you order the right one. Also beware that the original rolls of thermal paper will almost certainly now have deteriorated to a point that they'll only produce a very faded image, so instead just feed it standard till paper. Fast forward over 2 decades to the present day and various third-party accessories have breathed new life into the Game Boy Camera system, but my own favourite way to access them in the modern age is via a Wi-Fi printer device. I bought mine for around £25 from an Etsy seller called Niltronic, links in the description if you're interested. This cunning device is powered over micro USB and connects to your Game Boy like the standard printer. You then print your images as normal from the camera cartridge, but rather than being physically output to the old Game Boy printer, they're stored within the circuit board's memory. You can then use any computer, tablet or phone to connect to the board's own Wi-Fi network and then access the images through a really simple web page interface, even applying different colour palettes to them, including that classic Game Boy olive green. At last, you can access and back up your precious Game Boy Camera photos, allowing you to share them and crucially free up space on the cartridge. It also means you can now post them on model social networks, and some photographers have even dedicated entire accounts to Game Boy Camera photos. And while that may sound slightly comical at first, or the ultimate in hipster style, there is actually an appeal in trying to capture successful images at such a low resolution and in only 4 shades. You'll find that some subjects or situations simply won't work at all with this camera, while others remain recognisable but in a really low fidelity style. It really forces you to look differently at subjects and try to work around the camera's limitations. Newer Game Boy hardware can also enhance the overall experience, in particular modern backlit screens, whether on modified Game Boys or third-party models like the Analog Pocket, make composition and manipulation much more pleasant than using the screens on these original models, while upcoming firmware for the Analog Pocket itself will even let you save Game Boy Camera photos onto the SD card, which can be removed for easier access. With its basic imagery and cute game interface, it's easy to dismiss the Game Boy Camera as a mere toy, but it ticked several boxes lacking from every other digital camera at the time. It was small, indeed the world's smallest digital camera for a while, genuinely cheap, appealed to a broad age group, and even had an affordable option to print. There's no doubt it's also completely bonkers, but I'm personally very thankful for the Game Boy Camera nonetheless. So did you have one? Do you want one? Are you tempted to take up the challenge of posting meaningful Game Boy photos on your social streams? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thanks a lot for watching this video all the way to the end. If you enjoy my reviews of vintage gear, whether cameras, games or anything else, please do consider subscribing and also checking out the other videos on this channel, as there's already quite a lot to explore. And don't forget to let me know exactly what you'd like to see next, and I'll try and accommodate it in a future video. See you next time. Thanks again. Bye bye.